Okay, this is a meeting of the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. It's a working session for Guam Water Works Authority. For the record, those present are myself, Commissioner Sanchez, Martinez. Online with us is Mike Limchak. Okay. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 7 issues for decision that we'll be presenting to you this morning. The first is Resolution 18, FY 2023.
Okay.
And this is seeking approval of an IDIQ design and CM contract for undersized water line replacement. As the commissioners are aware, in the 2018 master plan, there were several programmatic line items for pipe replacement projects. This IDIQ is intended to provide design and CM services for one of those programmatic line items, specifically for undersized and aged galvanized steel water pipes. This is also urgent to us because of the PUC's emphasis on water loss control, and with the DMA implementation that we're doing now, it's become apparent that the majority of our issues are with service laterals 2 inches in galvanized steel, so this project will help us to address those critical areas. The location of the projects will be island-wide. We are anticipating that for the scope of work, it would be multiple task orders issued under this IDIQ contract, and the current estimate is about $2.6 million for all of the work. However, we intend to award based on an initial funding level provided by EPA grants of $1.5 million for the priority task orders initially, and then we anticipate additional funding from US EPA annually in order to augment the contract over the 5-year life. We anticipate task orders to be completed over that 5-year period, and as I mentioned, the initial funding shall be from US EPA grants, but there are also bond funds and IFCIP identified in our CIP, 5-year CIP for these types of water line replacements. For the selection and the award, we issued RFP 01 ENG 2022, 15 firms registered and picked up packets, but only 8 firms submitted proposals, and out of those 8, the selection committee evaluated all 8 firms and recommended Brown and Caldwell for award. So this project would be awarded to Brown and Caldwell if the board approves.
Okay. Any questions? Something we have to do. So you're getting, my only thought is you're getting EPA money or federal funding to do this IDIQ.
For the design work, yes.
For the design work. And then you're going to have to look for funds to actually build.
Do the construction.
Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
Okay. The next issue for decision, Resolution 36, FY 2023, and this is seeking additional funding to complete pressure zone realignment construction, the Phase 1 contract. As the board is aware, it previously authorized the basic services under this PZR Phase 1 contract, and then through subsequent resolutions also approved change orders for additive bid items. The locations for the projects under this PZR Phase 1 contract includes the Carnation PRV, Marble PRV, Ukudu PRV, Waisangsong, Clara, Terral, which is right out here in Manila on the back road, Maimai PRV, Kaiser Bypass, and the Kaiser PRV, both near the Kaiser Reservoir. We're seeking additional funding to do some minor work at several of these sites to include the Okudu, Clara, Maimai, Terral, and Kaiser PRVs in Derido, Manila. We're currently negotiating the change orders for this minor work with Sumitomo, but engineering is seeking approval of a not-to-exceed amount of $900,000 to bring the total authorized funding to $7.296 million for this project to be completed by the end of the year. The funding source will be grants and then several bond line items, including water audit, master metering, and PRV rehabilitation and replacement. You recall that under the PZR, we are incorporating some of the meter work that's required for the DMAs, which is the reason why the master metering and water audit funding are applicable here. And so we're seeking advance approval of a not-to-exceed amount of $900,000 so we can complete negotiations and get this work taken care of. I was mentioning before we started the work session that some of this minor work includes fence repairs and fencing enclosures for some of these sites. Just as by way of information, for example, the Route 15 site out here, we originally designed it without a fenced enclosure just for the power pedestal and control cabinet, and then during construction we experienced some theft of the stainless steel, so now we're having to go back and add fencing at some of these sites. So we'd like to get this project finished, but there is some additional work that needs to be done, and we realize we're coming back to you again.
I'm a big proponent of fencing.
So,
Huh?
Fences make good neighbors. Rob Frost. That's the Father Donan's English
Okay.
class. I still remember that.
Any questions? No questions? Go to the next one.
okay, next is Resolution 38 FY 2023, and this is seeking additional funding for the tank repair and bypass construction project. This is a part of the court order projects for rehabilitating our tanks. There are two tanks specifically which we are seeking additional funding for. The first is the Matic subdivision tank that is currently offline for cleaning and inspection. Once those inspections are done, we will be able to finalize the scope of repairs, but we did anticipate that they may include the tank floor replacement, roof and purlin rafter replacement, interior and exterior ladders, anchor bolt replacement, new interior coating and exterior coating, and other miscellaneous repairs. The initial estimate and the additive bid item was $877,000. However, based on the recent cost increases that we have seen, both due just to the construction market here and also to the inflationary impacts to materials, we are anticipating that it will, once the inspections are done and the final proposal is received, the cost will exceed what we have allocated. And so we are seeking in advance a not-to-exceed amount of 1.7 to fund the repair in total. And then for the Malolo tank, similarly, the estimate there was 1.128 for the additive bid item, and we are seeking 2.275 in total to fund that repair. So a total for both projects of $4 million that we're seeking. And again, we're seeking this in advance because this is a court order project, and we do have hard deadlines that we need to meet. We're seeking this funding authorization in advance so that we can streamline the contracting process and keep the work moving forward to meet those deadlines.
These are the last of the tanks.
These are the last of the steel tank repairs, I think. We might have one more after this, but I think these ones are the ones that are critical to the court order.
And you have some more construction of tanks, right?
Yeah, the concrete tanks
You have some
we
concrete
have
tanks you need to.
that still need to be built.
Yeah, okay. And you have funding for this?
We have funding for this.
Okay, bond funds, okay.
Sorry, I didn't mention that.
So this is repairing existing tanks versus building new ones?
Correct.
And then you're building some new ones?
Right.
That's the contract.
And the reason why the timing also is critical on these is because in the south, all of the tanks that are in line. And so we can't take them down all at one time because we need some storage capacity within the system. And so the sequential nature of the work adds to the amount of time it takes to do them, which is why the schedule then becomes critical in meeting the court order deadline.
Any other questions? No? Next.
I'll ask the CFO to do the next two resolutions.
Oh, yeah, our favorite.
Good morning. Resolution 39 FY 23 is a resolution to charge off $887,381 in receivables. The last time we did a write-off was last year in August. The Schedule A was not in the packet, so there is a separate sheet with a little more detail to break down the receivables. So included in the receivables is, majority of it is residential customers. There is one hotel. The AR other is related to work billed to a contractor. And we did have one employee write-off that's related to a retiree and health insurance collections. So we've changed our procedures to require our retirees to sign up for automatic deductions to prevent that from reoccurring. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have with regard to the write-offs.
And these are the aging, right? These are like 4 to 8 years old.
Yeah, generally, when the account reaches 4 years, we take a look at it as.
That's the account record?
Yes.
Now, with respect to the hotel, you're telling this particular hotel is completely out of business?
In bankruptcy, and we filed with the court.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you figure out over 8 years, we bill 850, 900 a million. This is barely a percent. So, I mean, it happens.
Okay. The next resolution, Resolution 40, is a request to update our credit card policy. This is a GWA joint resolution. Since the pandemic, we have moved more and more towards contactless policies, including payments. Much of our payments are either ACH or credit card. We recently had an audit done by the OPA. It's a GWA-wide audit. And, part of the reason why we're doing this is to kind of close some of the loopholes related to the procedures that we've typically done, but are outside the current procedures. That includes making payments on island. For instance, one of the things that we've been doing is we're allowed to file our court cases electronically, but the current policy allows for travel-related and off-island payments and not local. So by allowing this, it'll make things much more efficient. We can do same-day payments for many things. The other thing that we're asking for is to increase the overall authority from $50,000 per agency to $100,000 per agency. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is in the OPA audit, they encouraged us to work with GWA for the mileage program. The miles for GPA and GWA are supposed to go towards mileage for student sports travel. Currently, DOE has not adopted any procedures with that regard, but both agencies have credit cards that accumulate miles, and as soon as DOE adopts procedures, we can start donating such.
DOE or
DOE. DOA provides miles to DOE for scholarship-related travel.
And then there's also the medical,
Right,
That's the one.
that's the one.
right. I believe DOA, half of their miles is supposed to go to the medical, and half goes to DOE. But our roles only require it for sports. Yeah.
Questions?
Just a quick segue. Didn't you ask us that you wanted to get your parity with John P. with respect to your spending limits? Can you please look into that?
Yes, sir.
And then I know that John B. mentioned, Chairman Brady, that he wanted to kind of talk to us about raising the limit during the typhoons. Spending authority. Okay, so work with John B. and those guys and find out what exactly. And let's prepare for that. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Resolution 41 FY 2023, and this is seeking approval of a construction contract for the Ugam Surface Water Treatment Plant rehab. The board previously passed Resolution 03 FY 2023, approving the issuance of a bid procurement for this work, as it was over $1 million. And at that time, the estimate for the work was around $4 million. So that was the funding authorization that was approved by the board. We subsequently issued an invitation for bid 05 Engineering 2023, but we received no bids. We polled the respondents who picked up packages as to why they didn't submit a bid, made some modifications and issued a rebid, IFB 08 Engineering 2023, and we received 2 bid proposals on July 24th. Analysis of the bid proposals indicated that Sumitomo Mitsui Construction Company submitted the lowest base bid proposal. However, their bid was $9,188,000, and as I mentioned, the board's funding authorization was just over $4 million based on the engineering estimate. So construction costs have increased more than we anticipated, and we're faced with the decision of having to reduce the scope of the work to fit the budget or try to find additional funding. And management does not recommend reducing the scope of work because all of the improvements are critical to the reliable operation at Ugam. And you know, the impacts of Typhoon Mawar reinforce that, and so management has expended a lot of effort to identify additional funding, and we had some EPA unencumbered funding for this year. We made the request to use that. It was an additional $3.some million, and they EPA approved our use of that funding. And we've also identified some other bond interest funding that we are able to use. So we are seeking approval for a total funding authorization of the $9.188 million, along with a 10% contingency, bringing the total funding authorization to $10.107 million. So this will be GWA bond funds and EPA grant funds. As I mentioned, there were 2 bids received, and the lowest responsible bid was from Sumitomo Mitsui Construction Corporation. So we're seeking the board's approval to fund this and get that contract started.
Any questions? By the way, Mike, do you have any questions? Commissioner Chaco? No? Okay. Okay. That's it?
There is one other resolution that we'd like to call to your attention. I don't think it was uploaded. We're still working on it, but essentially the board previously approved a bond reallocation resolution for us to advance the tank projects and get additional funding to complete the tank projects. There was a slight error in the identified bonds for a couple of the line items. The amount doesn't change, but we just want to amend the resolution to reflect that it wasn't just Series 2020A bonds. The bulk of it was, but there were 1 or 2 line items with small amounts of 2016 and 2013 bond funds that were also being reallocated. So we wanted to make that correction. It's just more a formality, but we'll have the final resolution for the meeting, but I just wanted to make the board aware of that.
No problem.
No change to the total amount, just an amendment to add the source of the reallocated funding to include 2016 and 2013 bonds.
And
Commissioner
just a
Sanchez.
quick, maybe I misunderstood, in the chair had asked that in the August session, we might get a post-Marvar, what happened, what we learned, type of report. Is that something you're
It'll be this month, but it'll be at the
main meeting?
the main meeting. So
Okay.
my intention is to go over the management report today quickly, if it please the board, and then for the,
We'll just concentrate on
Concentrate on the
now.
Mar report.
right.
Okay, good. Okay.
So would the board like me to just quickly go through the
Yes.
highlights of the
Yeah,
management
yeah,
report? Okay, so I think in last month's report, we did not have the production summary for June, so that's included here. For the operations update in June, we had a total production rate of 36.3 million gallons a day from all sources, 32.9 MGD from deep wells, about half MGD from the springs, and then 1.9 from Ugam, and 1 from Tuman Maui, which is our typical numbers. We had 96 wells active and 4 offline, 9 with grounded motors in June. In July, the number increased slightly, 35.5 MGD from deep wells, bringing the total from all sources to 38.5. However, you will notice a slight decrease in Tuman Maui wells production of 0.74, so about 25% less than we normally would see from Tuman Maui. Again, 96 wells active in July, 2 secured, 1 on standby, and 11 grounded motors. If you flip to the next page for Tuman Maui production in June, you will see the up and down here. This was primarily a result of the power outages that we were seeing. And unfortunately, towards the end of June, you'll see it drop off, and that's because at that point, on one of the booster pumps, we had already had down, and we were waiting a shipment for that, and then the second booster pump, the redundant booster pump, also burned out, and so we lost production for the end of June up until about the first week of July, when we got one of the motors repaired, and we went back, and then you'll see from mid-June on, production steady at about 1 million gallons a day. So that was that issue in production. On the water distribution system for July, we saw also a little bit of motor issues with some of our pump stations, so our operability went down slightly from about 94% to 92.3% operable. So we still have all pump stations operating, but several of them have motors and pumps that need to be replaced. Water distribution tank levels in July, the south held steady, but we did see some issues keeping the northern reservoirs up to where they should be, especially towards the middle part of July, around the 19th, dipping down to only 20% capacity.
What's causing, is that power related?
Some of it was power related. Wells weren't able to keep full production by the time we found them. We'd lost some production time and had them reset, so that contributed to some. Also, we had a high number of breaks in July. You'll see that when we get to the leak report. We went above our backlog. Typically, we try to keep below 20. We were up near 35 or 40 backlog towards the middle of July, so the large number of leaks and breaks and the production issues all contributed to a decline in our tank levels, but it was primarily focused in Manila and Barrigada, and in the past week or so, the team has been able to get that back up, so we should be in the clear for this month. For wastewater collections, since the storm, we've also seen some issues with our pumps at the wastewater pump station, so our operability is down it was back in April, we were at 90%, and it's been declining since, so we're now at 81% operability. So we've got an order in for replacement pumps and motors, but it'll take a while for us to get those back up and running.
You know, Miguel, one of the things GPA does have is they have more inventory. They stock inventory for disaster-related events. So they have a little higher amount. I think you need to look at your system and see if you need to start stocking more pumps and stuff, you know, because given the fact that when you had Mauer, you had some pumps that failed and you had to replace them, and then trying to get some new pumps in. I'm just saying, look at that. I would
Yes.
recommend you look at that.
We will, one of the measures we will be seeking is an increase in our inventory levels.
Yeah.
But for Mawar, we did have sufficient pumps and motors in inventory because of the prior work that we had done. And as soon as we started depleting that, the operations team was asked to already assemble replacements for those, and an order is in the works for that, so that we can
So you
replenish.
use some of your inventory to deal
To
with
do
it,
exactly what
and
it,
now you're
we need.
replenishing, now
Yeah.
the chairman's saying, make sure you replenish.
So the effort for that was, and the monies to establish critical inventory was focused previously on wells. Now we're seeing that we need to do it across the board in all asset categories, not just the wells, but also the pump stations and wastewater pump stations.
So moving parts.
Yes. Okay, also in collections are CCTV and sewer cleaning. You could see we were below targets in May and June. In June primarily because of recovery efforts, but the boys have picked it back up in July, and so we're trying to get back on track for the total annual averages. So we'll get there, make sure we get there. For wastewater treatment in July, for the month, we had about 892,000 pounds of sludge that we disposed of at a cost of about $80,000 between Hagåtña, Northern, and Agate Santa Rita. Average flows were fairly constant for Hagåtña and Northern. We did see a slight increase in Agate because of the rain, and Pneumatic and Rahan were at stable levels. So total average daily flows of about 12 MGD across all wastewater treatment plants. For our asset management program, the ratio of preventive maintenance to corrective maintenance has held constant at about 75% preventive maintenance and 25% corrective maintenance on equipment. The completion ratios for the preventive maintenance, 93% complete in terms of work orders, and for the corrective maintenance, 95% complete. When you factor in leak repairs versus equipment repairs for corrective maintenance, the equipment is at 46% of total corrective maintenance work orders, and the leak repairs are 54% of total. And then the completion for those work orders, 95% completion on corrective maintenance and 98% completion on leak repair work orders. On one Guam update, we had an inspection in July at Tuman Maui well. No concerns other than the equipment that we mentioned we needed to replace. Capital equipment replacements require Navy approval prior, so we're seeking that currently for the booster pumps that failed that we're seeking to replace. Also, in terms of the permanent increase in production rates to meet allowable permitted rates, the Navy did allow a temporary 30-day increase in our production levels, which are defined in our license agreement with the Navy. In the post-war recovery, we had a 30-day allowance to increase production to help us. At the end of the 30 days, that went back down to the license. So the permanent increase that we're seeking, we still haven't gotten approval from DOD. There was a request from us for an easement for a portion of our collection system along Marine Drive that kind of skirts into Andy South, the base there. I guess they're calling the Marbo Skaggs area. So currently, we were working on getting that easement from the Navy. They came back and asked us, what about if we want to relocate that line out of the Skaggs area and put it on Marine Drive? So if they did that, then the Navy would coordinate with us in advance. So they're thinking about that, they're looking at it. If they do decide that that's the route they want to take, it'll solve this easement problem by moving the gravity line out of Navy property and putting it entirely within the easement. We indicated that we may have a capacity project, which is part of the consent decree. So if they were to move it, it would be at their expense, but we said, could we also address the capacity issue? And they said, of course, we'll coordinate it. So if they do decide to do it, then we would coordinate the work required in the consent decree to increase the capacity along that line with the DOD's efforts to. In addition, DOD is also undertaking a study on PFAS for their water system. They sought some information from us, so there's information exchange. We have done a design for 823 and 825, and so we have some test data for granular activated carbon we're sharing with them. They are also seeking to do a study on SAFF, which is a surface air foam fractionation technology that floats the contaminants to the surface and then skims them off. So they're looking at that as we have been. I've mentioned this to the board about a potential centralized treatment facility using this technology. So we're trying to combine our efforts here to see what works for Guam, and so we're sharing information on that. In addition, we had a meeting with EPA's Office of Research and Development to establish, they're interested in establishing as a quote-unquote test community to examine what methods work well for PFAS treatment in the territories, and Guam expressed its interest in being that test community. So if the project is successful, we will be allowed to utilize EPA resources to test various treatment technologies here. So we had one meeting, we're having another meeting in about a week, I think. And then finally, the Navy expressed that they are seeking to upgrade their wastewater treatment plant, and then as part of that project, provide some interconnections with our wastewater treatment plant. So that study is ongoing.
Is this down at Aga Santa Rita?
It's down at Big Navy, yes.
Big Navy.
So there are discussions ongoing about that. Just wanted to make the point.
Whole plant, too.
Yeah,
That's been around there a long time.
it has been. They did some when I first came on board here. They were just finishing up some rehabilitation work, but I think based on the increase in their activity, they are seeking to expand or to build a new plant.
And
Yes, that's
what you're
being
kinda-
discussed. Yeah.
that helps them save a nickel, gives us some volume, more of a synergy of. Northern turned out to be a solution for the military and the civilian community.
Yeah.
But we also know Agate and Big Navy have two plants.
And we did design into Agate Santa Rita the additional capacity to take a portion, or actually the Navy's current wastewater treatment plant capacity. If we built an additional ditch and an additional clarifier, which we have the space for, we have the stub outs for, so it could be done rather easily. And so they have considered that, but the previous discussions, even if that were to happen, they would keep their facility as kind of a pre-treatment because of the different types of waste that they have there, some more on the industrial side.
Okay.
So the complexion of that is changing because of the increased capacity that they're looking at. So that, I guess, this project or their study will kind of look into those things, but also the intertie with our treatment plant.
Shit happened.
On the court order summary, no changes. We're still at 98% complete, and there is a list of 4 SSOs that we had reported in July. Not much to report on the land acquisition summary. Only one project had some additional information for July, but we're still waiting on Department of Land Management. This is for the Istanbul tanks and resolving some of the land issues there. And I think the last one, as I already touched upon, our leak repairs for the month of July. You can see towards the middle part of July, we had backlog increase to above 35, and that also contributed to some of our issues in the tank levels. So, but we've got, by the end of July, got it back down to under 20.
Are you gonna upload that, or maybe I missed it, is what you're reading from Holland?
Did we upload the GM's report? Not yet.
I
No.
couldn't find that,
Yeah.
but quick, no problem.
It'll be
So,
uploaded today.
it'll be uploaded so we can look at it before the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Chris, you want to go through?
For the accounts receivable for residential customers greater than 60 days, we saw a increase of 161,000, and that was customers also coming current on their bills compared to the previous month. For the commercial customers, we saw an increase, sorry. So commercial had an increase of 63,000, even though there was a decrease in 19 customers coming, specifically for one account. So there was one account that made up the majority of that delinquency. For customer service, the main highlights for July from customer service is the average wait times at all locations increased to 9.5 minutes compared to the normal, which is usually around 3 to 4 minutes per customer. And that was primarily because of bill disputes due to Typhoon Mawar. So the reps had to kind of go through data logs with the customers and kind of explain to them why their bills were what they were. And then also 14% of GWA customers in July had ongoing leaks compared to 9% from the previous month. And again, that was a result of the activity from Typhoon Mawar, where there wasn't as much water in the system, where meters weren't picking up the leaks. So 14% is usually the average from previous months prior to the typhoon. And then the customer care section had 21 summer youth participants. They all worked in our records department, and they prepared 60 boxes of paper records to be digitized during that time. And then they also took tours of the GWA lab, the meter test facility, and participated in training on how to check your house for leaks and also water conservation.
Financials last Thursday. We provided an updated GWA, so we're hoping that the auditors turn that around quickly, and we should get it in the next week or so. This is a snapshot of our financial indicators for the month of July. Our FTEs went up to 364 from last month, 357. Our demand did go up last month, particularly as in comparison with June, and our revenues also increasing. The next page is our
You can recover that though from FEMA, right?
So we are
recovering, then you get Marwar. That seems to be a trend that we saw with COVID. Overall, we're essential. They gotta have water. Oh, and you're gonna upload that as well? Okay, no problem. Perfect. Always good stuff.
Okay, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, just one note, you are bringing the budget to the September meeting, right? And that'll, yeah.
But do you have the budget that they're working from for, on a going forward basis?
Five-year plan.
Which you approved?
I'm sorry, as part of the.
True up.
And then we'll be, it will be requested, but if not, we'll adjust the budget.
But the budget, okay, so we've already approved a prospective budget for true-up purposes. Right?
Correct.
But then we're gonna go through,
That's Mike.
This might,
but then we'll go through a more formal, FY '24 budget approval.
based on the true up,
We'll react to
the true up.
what their decision is.
Mike, did you have a question? Michael?
No, I don't. You guys are coming in a little bit broken the last couple of times, but no questions.
Okay. That's it. We have no other business. We're done?
That's it, sir.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.